Hi and welcome to the channel. My name's Richie. I'm a first year graduate entry medical student at the University of Chester. So in 4 years I'll be a F1 doctor. I also have a studio with my friend John. John's a multi-instrumentalist producer, but he's primarily a drummer. He drums all over Liverpool all the time. He's constantly drumming. I'm also a officer cadet in the University Royal Navy unit, which means that I'm a list 7 reservist, so I can't be deployed because I'm not actually trained yet. But it's kind of like cadets for university students. The next 2 hurdles for me are to pass the first year of uni and to get medical cadetship with the Royal Navy. If I'm successful in getting Royal Navy medical cadetship, what that means is they'll pay the next 3 years of fees and I'll be paid a salary whilst I study. I then do my 2 foundation years as a junior doctor, or as a resident doctor now referred to as, in the military hospital group. So I'll be in one of the military hospitals, either Birmingham or Plymouth, Portsmouth. After this point I'd go to Dartmouth, finish my officer training, at which point I could then go to Lympstone and complete the commando course, which means that I could be deployed with 3 Brigade, which is the commandos, so the Royal Marines, and people like the Royal Artillery, Logistics, Intelligence, Royal Engineers. If they're working with 3 Brigade, they all carry out the All Arms Commando course, so be doing the same course. So as if it's not hard enough doing graduate entry medicine, also trying to run a studio and join the Royal Navy at the same time is quite classic of me, either pushing myself harder than I should or biting off more than I can chew. So I think it's quite an interesting story, and I want the purpose of these videos to be kind of educational to other people, to help other people if they are thinking about doing the same sort of career path as me, so that they can learn from my experiences and my mistakes. So, I mean, 10 years ago, I was completely lost. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And if somebody told me, oh, you'll, be in med school in 10 years, I would have been like, you're mental. So yeah, becoming a doctor was literally the last thing on my mind. So, I wasn't sure what to do. I was managing a bar and felt like I could be doing more, but I didn't know what to do. So I did what everyone does, and I went to university and I studied audio production. And I went to Liverpool and I had a great time. It was a cracking 2 years. So where I went SAE, they do 2-year intensive degrees instead of 3 years. So you'd cover in 8 months what you'd cover in a year in other universities. I got halfway through level 6 and was offered a job as a sound engineer. So in that kind of sphere, the job is more important than the degree. The degree is actually kind of useless. So I spent that summer building stages, doing live sound, and it was really fun. It was a really good fun summer. I worked kind of across the south of England. It wasn't, big events, but when it's small events and there's only a couple of you doing all the heavy lifting, all the hard work, it's quite gritty and grueling, and you'll have 20-hour days, and you'll have 20-hour days with, little to no sleep, trying to eat. You're in the sun all day, trying not to get sunburn or sunstroke. But this was literally just before COVID hit. And obviously it was seasonal. So the company offered to take me on, paying me a salary from the following January. So I got a job on site. I was labouring on site, laboured through the winter, and that was also grueling, but a really good experience. It was really good fun. I recommend any guy or girl, if you're up for it, go and get a job on site. It's better money than a lot of other jobs, and it's good fun. But meanwhile, I applied to the University of Portsmouth, and this was essentially topping up what I'd done already, because I completed level 4 and 5. It was topping up and doing level 6. So I did another year of university. I wasn't sure whether I'd need the degree, but thank God I did it, because without it, I wouldn't be doing graduate entry medicine today. So if you start something, finish it. After a couple of years of sound engineering and a few odd jobs in between, I went for a job at a medium secure forensic mental health unit. The plan at this point was to go into the Royal Navy, but as a mental health nurse. So my plan was to go and do postgraduate mental health nursing at Southampton and apply to the Royal Navy whilst I was doing it. What I needed to do that degree was relevant experience in mental health. So I looked around the area and I saw that there was a job going at this unit, and I applied for it and I got the job. I was interviewed by two guys, and one of them was a Royal Navy doctor, and I'd actually quoted part of the Royal Marine ethos. It was a question to do with how you deal with the kind of emotions around the difficult situations and the difficulties being on a mental health ward, something like that. So I quoted cheerfulness in the face of adversity. And after the interview, the Royal Navy medic was the guy that was kind of escorting me out, and he said, "Are you interested in joining the Royal Navy?" And I said, "Yeah, that's the plan, do mental health nursing." And he said, "Don't do mental health nursing, go and do graduate entry medicine. You're driven enough, you're smart enough, you can do it." So I thought medicine was just for rich kids, and it just never occurred to me. The idea of becoming a doctor just never for a minute occurred to me until I spoke to this guy. And when I looked into the application process, and when I looked into how the funding worked, and seeing that there was funding available, and it's different for graduate entry than it is to undergraduate, because I already had an undergraduate, I'd already used up that funding, and if I were to apply for another undergraduate, I'd have to have funded it myself. Graduate entry, there is funding in the first year available, and there's more funding in the second, third, fourth, but it's kind of reduced. You have a maintenance loan from student finance in the first year, and then third, fourth, fifth, you have a NHS bursary, which is good because it's a bursary and you don't pay it back, but it's significantly less. It's like £4,000 less than the entire maintenance loan. So you can see why there is a massive appeal for getting medical cadetship with the Royal Navy, because they pay the fees and they pay you a salary. So that would mean that I wouldn't have worry troubles for the next 3 years if I'm successful. I think that my belief in myself was starting to grow at this point, and I think that my belief in myself was starting to grow at this point, and I was starting to feel more capable of achieving, and that was quite an interesting kind of change in my perception of myself. But it was also around this time that I got Bob Katz's book, who is a famous mastering engineer, and I wanted to understand mastering more, and I kind of started taking the time to master things for people for free and doing a really, really terrible job. And it took about 2 years before it was like the penny dropped. Something clicked, and then I was like, oh, it makes sense now. And you never stop learning. But this is kind of, if you're into music, you're into engineering music or mixing or mastering, it's the same as if you're in the military or you're in the medical profession. You are committed to lifelong learning. You never stop learning things. And I think there's a lot of parallels in the qualities that make you good at each of those, as disparate as those career paths seem. I think that good attention to detail, good time management skills, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, not understanding something, and taking your time with a problem to find a solution or to find whatever the correct answer is essential for all of these careers. Not panicking because you don't know the answer to something. Being confident in yourself. I just think all of that is relevant to all of those fields. But I fell in love with the process of mastering. There's less time involved, and you can radically change the way a track sounds, and you can fix problems, but you can also educate people. So half of what I do as a mastering engineer is somebody will send me something and I will give them feedback, and I'll say, these 3 things are problematic because of X, Y, and Z. So do A, B, and C. And then when they move forward with their work, when they do other pieces of work, they've got that in the back of their mind and they've learned from it. So it makes them better at what they're doing. And that's half of what I love about it. And the other half is that there is an element of creativity there. But I'm not spending hours trying to get a guitar tone or a snare, or, It's shorter bursts, more fun, and I just appreciate it more. But briefly, like, what is mastering? So you can imagine when you hear a song, all of those instruments are being played by musicians in a studio, and they're being recorded. So they're like leaves on a tree, and then the leaves go down to branches that go down to more branches, and you get kind of fewer and fewer until you get to the trunk. So what I get is a stereo mix of all of those factors, and that's like the trunk. And then I've got to take that trunk and make it ready for release. So I use effects to fix any problems, or enhance what's there, to really kind of hold this song in its best light. So another way of thinking about it is like curating art. So when you're curating art, you've got to think about what order are these pieces of art going to go in, and what walls are they going to go on, what rooms are they going to go in, what distances between them are we going to have, what lighting are we going to use to really show them in their best light. That's more like mastering. It's a very fine band of tolerance and change before you can screw it up and make it sound worse than when it came in, which you're trying to not do. So I had some decent speakers that I got while I was at uni, and I bought, another pair of slightly more expensive ones, and then a lot of the gear that you see behind me is quite expensive analog equipment, and we use it to enhance the sound of the music. That's all it does, in different ways. And sometimes it can make up for the fact that people are making music in ways where they're lacking this. That can be quite important. So if people are just essentially recording straight into their computer, it's a very digital world that they're kind of making that music in. Once it comes out as a stereo file and I play it back through this hardware, it brings it into the analog world, and it can add life to it that isn't otherwise there. That's why mastering is important. I even went back to SAE, my old university, a few weeks ago and did some recording with one of my mates, which was really nice. It was cool to get in on the old SSL board. There's a few problems with it that we had to work around, but we got quite a bit done. It was quite a good day. So I'm still interested in music. I'm still trying to enjoy it and make a bit of money from it, and try and help other people out and just get what they're doing to a better standard. And that's it. So I worked for 2.5 years as a mental health support worker, and in that time I worked with pretty much every kind of mental health patient that you could work with. I worked in pretty much every type of unit you can work in. I saw some awful things and things that will stay with me, that have changed me in some way. It's not an easy job. It's depending on where you work, every unit's different. Some units are great, some units really aren't. It's not easy, seeing patients that are really unwell, who are treatment resistant, for example. That can be quite common. And they're just tormented by their illness, and that's their life. And all you're trying to do is just make them as comfortable as you possibly can, or as comfortable as they possibly can be. Some patients get violent from time to time, and then you throw the lack of funding for the NHS on top, and how short-staffed the wards are, how low the pay is. You see people burning out left, right and centre, and it's hard to avoid that yourself. I mean, that said, it was one of the best jobs I've ever had. I wouldn't change it for anything. My favourite part was probably working in CAMS, which is Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. So that was mostly with like teenage girls in one of the units. It was a really challenging environment. It was very high risk, very high risk of patient suicide, and you had to be really on top of observations and things like that. Otherwise, people could die. It wasn't uncommon to find people who had ligatured who were like purple, but when you see them rehabilitate and discharge, move on with their lives, that was really rewarding. Like, those moments were the best, and then you were like, that's why I do this. Those were the best moments. So I took 2 years getting into university from when I took that first mental health job. I wasn't quite ready to do the UCAT in the summer that was approaching, for a number of reasons. I wanted to get more NHS experience under my belt as well before I, made a full application. So you'll have to do some sort of entry test. I did the UCAT. Some people do the GAMSAT. Some universities accept GAMSAT and UCAT. Mine did, but obviously I just did the UCAT. I had to identify the universities that did the UCAT because it seemed like the most kind of realistic test for me to do. And the universities I applied for were Southampton twice for the BM4 and the BM5, so the undergrad and the graduate entry, University of Warwick and University of Chester. And I got into Chester. I didn't really want to go to Warwick. It's in the Midlands, well, it's in Coventry. I didn't really want to be in the Midlands. And I just got, I don't know, a weird vibe. So quite early on in the application process, they asked for some evidence of something. I can't remember what it was. And I just didn't send it, and then they withdrew me. And that was that. Southampton was the goal until I went to an open day at Chester, and I felt really at home. I didn't get high enough UCAT. I think I got 2730, which wouldn't have been enough to get onto the BM4 which is a graduate entry at Southampton. They were interested to take me to interview for the BM5, but at this point I'd already got my offer for Chester, so I'd kind of settled with Chester. It was one of these situations where it just felt right. Everything just sort of fell into place. And if there's one thing that I've learned over the last few years, it's that everything seems to happen for a reason. Like I applied for the Army and the Navy before, and it just didn't pan out. But in hindsight, it was like it wasn't the right thing to do. A, at that time, B, going into the kind of the two career choices at that time that I was interested in. So everything does seem to kind of like, I don't know, fall into place somehow, but you just have to go with the flow sometimes. But as for the UCAT, I got very average scores in all of it apart from abstract reasoning, which is kind of like you've got set A, set B, the shapes, and you have to find like what the rules are for set A, set B, and does this belong to A, B, or neither. Apparently they're scrapping it next year, so I think I got away lucky because I nearly got a perfect score. I think I got 2 questions wrong on it, and that dragged the whole score up high enough for me to be over the threshold for Chester. I can't remember what the threshold was, but it wasn't massively high. So I think me getting into university, I think luck had a huge part to play in it, more so than anything else, and that's just being honest. I don't think I'm overly smart or like anything special. I think I just push myself really hard, and I think the hard work pays off, and that's another lesson. So I got 860 in abstract reasoning. I got 600 in verbal reasoning. I knew that would be my lowest because I'm not that quick at reading and retaining. I got 620 in quantitative reasoning, which is the maths, and I got 650 in decision making, which is like logical puzzles. So really average scores. But the AR brought it up, so it's kind of above average. Don't do what I did with the UCAT or the GAMSAT or the BMAT, whatever you wind up doing. But I spent kind of a few months doing abstract reasoning, which is probably why the score was as great as it was. And then about a month before, I started practicing the other sections. And then about 2 weeks before, that was when I started doing it under time restraints, and I sucked. Like, especially, I thought I was good at maths, but the quantitative, under time pressure, I just couldn't do. I just sucked at it. And the UCAT is fluky. Like, I think I got a particularly easy test, and that's just the way it is. But make sure you give yourself a few months, get Medify, and I mean, it's only like £30 a month. Do it for like 4 months. Do a month of practicing all the questions. Like, start off with a section, do a week on each section, and then for the next few months, do it under time pressure, do the practice papers, and you'll just get quicker at it. And they talk about like burning out and what have you. I mean, it's one of those things where you've just got to find a way through it. And if you're going to burn out doing UCAT prep for 4 months, then you're going to burn out in graduate entry med because it's hard. But just use your time wisely. there's plenty of resources on YouTube as well. There's loads of people talking about their methods of like scans and stuff for AR, and I don't think I even used anything like that for AR. I think I just got my head around reading them, and it was just through loads of practice. It was just that I didn't practice the other sections enough, and that's my own fault. If you're reading often, you'll get better at verbal reasoning, So I got into uni, bought some analog. I built all of the acoustic treatment, apart from a few here that I got out of another old studio that I was working at. And I brought it all up, shoved it in here, and like some of these were like on legs, and the legs were like sticking out in the room. Everything just felt like cluttered. So I think in August or September, whenever I moved up before starting uni, I came in here, pulled everything out, and properly built everything in. And it's more spacious, it's really vibey, it's a really cool space. Like, we're really happy with it. The next hurdle is getting more work in, and this is why I'm trying to do more on the socials. I've never wanted to be a content creator. I don't particularly want to do it now. I just hope that these videos bring some entertainment or some educational value to people, and cautionary tales. For example, don't practice AR for 4 months and then leave everything else to the last 2 weeks. But I had like, I don't know, a manic moment. I was like, I'm going to build a load of acoustic treatment, bought a load of timber and the rock wall that goes inside, bought a massive wheel of the material. A load of them were black before. I bought black first, did those, and they were in my old room. And it made a huge difference. Well, the big thing as well was what you call a cloud, which is like a big bit over the one, like basically two of these stuck together overhead. You can't do that in here because the ceiling's too low, but it is sounding great in here regardless. Thank God. And then we put like the kind of mood lights in and stuff, and it's just an awesome space. It's good fun working in here. So yeah, built the studio, applied for the University Royal Navy unit, got in, had an interview, got in. Our coxswain, who's like the chief, he's awesome, really helpful guy. I've got my mod 90 now, which is my security clearance. I've signed the Official Secrets Act, and hopefully in the new year I'll get the application moving forward a bit more quickly, because it seems to have just sort of stagnated over the last few weeks, but I'm putting it down to Christmas. I got to go on the Prince of Wales, the aircraft carrier, a few weeks ago, and it wasn't actually through URNU. It was because my mate was on board, and he was like, "Do you want to come on board?" And I was like, "Absolutely, yeah." So got a big, massive tour of the ship. Got to see the medical part as well. It's awesome. You like walk in, it's literally like a GP practice. There's like chairs either side. There's a desk with like a secretary. You've got two kind of GP rooms. To the left, to the right, you've got dentistry. So there's like a dentist chair. There's a dentist, 2 dental nurses, and then you go through these double doors, and you're literally in a hospital on the ship. So if people are quite severely injured, this is where they'd be taken. And when the ship's on operations in like the South China Sea, they'll have like surgeons and anaesthetists on board and things like that. So it's really interesting tour, and it was cool to see what I could be doing as a Royal Navy medic. If I'm not off with the commandos, then I could be on one of the carriers or one of the other smaller warships. And moving forward through URNU, there'll be loads more opportunities like this, which is really exciting. It's all really good fun. We had a damage control board exercise a few weeks ago, and it was simulating that there was a fire in one particular part of the ship that's then kind of spread, but you had to write down where it was, what time it started, and every report that came through, the guy would only say it once. Like he'd be like, "Fire is spread to this room," the firefighters are doing the, and you had to like write it down and then communicate it to another team over a radio, whilst you've got like 6 other people on radios at the same time on the same channel, and the other person had to then communicate that to the other person like upstairs with another control board, damage control board, and then at the end we compared them. So that was quite a fun exercise, because it's a really stressful situation, and if the communication breaks down, these are legal documents that are supposed to give a realistic representation of what's happened on that ship, if there's been a fire or a flood or whatever. And you can see like how stressful it gets. It was really good fun. And then you have like man overboard exercises where they've got a really big, heavy mannequin that they drop in the sea, and then you've got to get it out between you. Things like that. It's all good fun. There's also the opportunity to be a Royal Marine Officer Cadet. I'm not sure if I can do it alongside the medical cadetship, but it would be a good thing to do because you get to go to Lympstone, you get absolutely beasted by the PTIs. That would be a really good insight prior to going to Lympstone as a medic, provided I get through med school and I get cadetship and I get in the Navy and everything. So it's not all set in stone, but it's the plan that I'm sticking to. So any other bits of experience that I can get through URNU, I'm just going to jump at, because it's really fun. You get paid for it and it's really educational. But I think that all of this, I'm hoping ultimately that it's going to benefit a lot of other people, me doing all of these things. I feel like me mastering benefits people who are making music. Being a doctor and being a Royal Navy doctor, where you could be anywhere in the world giving humanitarian aid, that gives you a global reach that you might not get as a NHS doctor. You'd have to go abroad, which I could do if the Royal Navy falls through. I don't know. At the moment, the hurdles, as I said at the start of the video, are getting cadetship and getting through first year, because first year is the hardest. It's 2 years condensed into one. But having this as a creative space where people can come in and do their thing, that's helpful to other people. So that's where I'm at the moment. I think I'm going to continue making videos about different things. I'm going to try and make them more interesting than this one. I'll probably get a new camera at some point because I'm just using my iPhone and the sound quality is probably shit, so I've just put a microphone there and I've got this thing strapped to me. I don't think it's even working. But yeah, I'll be making videos about med-related stuff, music-related stuff, military-related stuff. I hope you enjoyed this, waffling on about nonsense. Get in touch if you need anything, mixing, mastering, or if you're local, want to do some recording, like put you in touch with John. He'll set you up. Check out the channel, check out our Instagram, and thanks for watching.